The mystery of the lost city of Atlantis. Fact or fiction? Hi, everyone. It's me. Number 10. The original writings. Let's start at the beginning. The first mention of the legendary island nation of Atlantis comes from the ancient Greek philosopher, Plato. He wrote about the city in his work Timaeus and Critias, which was written around 360 BC in his story. Plato describes Atlantis as being situated in the Atlantic Ocean and being bigger than Libya and Egypt combined. He also says that it was ruled over by a powerful king named Atlas, who had 9 sons and 8 daughters. According to Plato, the Atlanteans were a warlike race who went to war with the Greeks and tried to conquer Athens. But they were ultimately defeated and their city was flooded and sunk beneath the ocean. Now, there are a few things to keep in mind here. First of all, we do not know if Plato was just making the whole thing up out of thin air, or if he was based on some sort of historical event or tradition. And secondly, even if there was some sort of historical kernel to the story, Plato's version of Atlantis is very clearly an allegory or a story that is meant to teach a moral lesson, so it's probably not meant to be taken literally. Despite this, though, Plato's description of Atlantis has captured the imagination of people for centuries and has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. Number 9. Why is it so popular? There are many reasons why the legend of Atlantis has endured for so long. For one, it's a great story. The idea of a lost civilization that once held great power but is now gone forever is a powerful one. Additionally, the mystery surrounding Atlantis is also part of its appeal. No one knows for sure if the city ever really existed, which means that people are free to come up with their own theories and explanations. Some believe that Atlantis was real and that it sank beneath the ocean due to a natural disaster like a tsunami or volcanic eruption. Others believe that Plato made the whole thing up. But regardless of what you believe, the legend of Atlantis is sure to live on. Number 8. Atlantis in the Mediterranean. One of the most popular theories about where Atlantis could have been located is in the Mediterranean Sea. This theory is supported by the fact that Plato said that Atlantis was close to the Strait of Gibraltar, which is the narrow body of water that separates Spain and Morocco. Some believe that Atlantis could have been located somewhere in this area, perhaps off the coast of Portugal or Spain. There are a number of different places in the Mediterranean that have been suggested as the possible location of Atlantis, including the islands of Malta and the Peloponnese Peninsula in Greece. However, none of these theories have been proven, and it remains a mystery exactly where Atlantis could have been located. It is important to note that Plato's description of Atlantis as being bigger than Libya and Egypt combined makes it unlikely that it was located in the eastern Mediterranean. If Atlantis was located here, it would have been much closer to Asia Minor and the Levant, which Plato says nothing about. So the western Mediterranean seems like the most likely spot for the lost city. Number 7. The Caribbean Atlantis. In recent years, a new theory has emerged suggesting that Atlantis was actually located in the Caribbean Sea, not the Atlantic. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the name Atlantis doesn't necessarily imply that the city was in the Atlantic Ocean at all. After all, the word Atlantis simply means islands. Additionally, the Caribbean is closer to the Americas than it is to Europe, which makes it more plausible that the Atlanteans could have been a pre-Columbian civilization. There are also a number of Caribbean islands that match Plato's description of Atlantis, such as Cuba, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. These islands are all relatively close to each other and are big enough to have supported a large population. Additionally, the Caribbean was home to several advanced civilizations, such as the Maya and the Aztecs. So it is not unreasonable to think that one of these civilizations could have built a great city that rivaled Athens. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for this theory is the fact that there are a number of underwater ruins in the Caribbean that have never been explored or identified. It is possible that these ruins could be the remains of Atlantis, or that they could be the remnants of one of the many other lost civilizations that are thought to have existed in the Caribbean. No. 6. Atlantis in Antarctica. Believe it or not, some people actually believe that Atlantis was located in Antarctica. This may sound crazy, but there are a few reasons why people think this. First of all, Antarctica is a very mysterious place. We know very little about it because it's so cold and inhospitable. So it's easy to believe that there could be all sorts of undiscovered ruins and artifacts there. Additionally, Antarctica is much larger than it appears on maps. Because of its proximity to the South Pole, much of Antarctica is actually hidden below the horizon. So it's possible that there could be entire continents that we don't even know about yet. Finally, there are a number of geological features in Antarctica that resemble those described by Plato. For example, there are a number of underwater mountains and plateaus that could have formed the basis for Atlantis. There are also a number of ancient fossils that have been found in Antarctica, which suggests that the continent was once home to a more advanced civilization. Of course, this theory is highly speculative, and there is no concrete evidence to support it. However, it's still an interesting theory nonetheless. 5. Atlantis and the Greeks. Another reason why Atlantis is so popular is that it was the ultimate other. To the ancient Greeks, Atlantis represented everything that they were not. They were a powerful and advanced civilization that lived on an island away from the rest of the world. The Greeks were a seafaring people who loved to explore and trade, but they were also very xenophobic. They didn't like outsiders very much, and they were suspicious of anyone who came from the sea. This attitude is reflected in Plato's description of Atlantis. The Atlanteans are portrayed as a warlike and aggressive people who invaded Greece because the Greeks were different. From the Atlanteans, they were seen as barbaric and uncivilized. This is likely one of the reasons why the Greeks were so fascinated by Atlantis. They were curious about this mysterious island and its people, but they were also afraid of them. The Greeks were familiar with other cultures in the Mediterranean, such as the Egyptians and the Persians, but Atlantis was different. There was something about the Atlanteans that was seen as fundamentally alien to the Greeks, and this made the city all the more intriguing. 4. Atlantis and the Bible. Some people believe that Atlantis is mentioned in the Bible, and if so, it could shed some light on the city's history. There are a few passages in the Bible that are often cited as evidence for this, but the most commonly cited is Ezekiel 27, which describes the destruction of a great trading city. The city is described as being surrounded by water and is known for its wealth and luxury. Some people believe that this passage is describing Atlantis, but there is no evidence to support this claim. Number 3. Atlantis and the Great Flood. There are a number of biblical stories that describe a great flood that destroyed the world. The most well-known is, of course, the story of Noah's Ark. But there are also other stories in the Bible that describe different floods that could have potentially destroyed Atlantis. Some people believe that the destruction of Atlantis was caused by a natural disaster, such as a tsunami or volcanic eruption. If this is true, then it's possible that the event could have been recorded in the Bible. However, there is no evidence to support this claim. No. 2. Atlantis and the Ice Age. The last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, but before that, much of the world was covered in ice. This would have made it difficult for any civilization to survive, but it's possible that Atlantis was destroyed by the changing climate. If Atlantis was located in the Arctic or Antarctic, then the city could have been wiped out when the ice melted. Alternatively, if Atlantis was located in the Mediterranean, then the changing climate could have led to a collapse of the civilization. However, there is no evidence to support this claim either. Number 1. The search for Atlantis. The possibility that Atlantis was a real place has captured the imaginations of scientists, historians, and explorers for centuries. In fact, there have been many expeditions that have set out to find the lost city. The most famous of these expeditions was probably that of Napoleon's brother Joseph Bonaparte. In 1807, Joseph became the king of Sweden and Norway, and he decided to use his newfound power to find Atlantis. He funded a series of expeditions to explore the Baltic Sea, but none of them were successful. Other explorers have also searched for Atlantis over the years, but none of them have found any evidence of the city. Even today, there are still people who are searching for Atlantis. In fact, there are a number of websites dedicated to the search. However, it's important to remember that Atlantis is probably a myth. There is no evidence that the city ever existed, and most historians believe that it was created by Plato as an allegory. Nonetheless, the search for Atlantis is a fascinating topic, and one that is sure to capture the imaginations of people for centuries to come. Thanks for watching. Which of these theories do you think is the most likely explanation for Atlantis? Do you think it was real or just a figment of Plato's imagination? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my others. See you next time.